All right, it is 6:30 p.m. and the Urban Design Commission meeting for October 8th, 2014 is called to order. Can we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Sawhill? Ms. Sullivan?
Here.
Ms. Emerton?
Here.
Mr. Winchester?
Here.
Ms. Ream?
Here.
Mr. Condon?
Here.
Mr. Leonetti?
Here.
Mr. Miller? Thank you.
Okay, so we have a quorum present for this evening. And we don't have any minutes on the agenda for tonight, so we will be moving on to, do we have any disclosures? Okay, no disclosures for this evening. Anything on the consent agenda, right? So there's also nothing on the consent agenda, so we are cruising right along. So that's going to take us, we are now ready to open the regular agenda. And to start that, I need to read the appeal process. So an individual may have appeal rights relating to any action the Urban Design Commission takes, except commission recommendations to the Assembly which are not appealable. Appeals must be filed with the clerk's office within 20 days after approval by the Urban Design Commission of the resolution, which is the commission's final decision. A fee for the appeal is required at the time of filing, and an individual may request written findings from any commission decision within 7 days. So we are starting this evening with case 2014-0145. Is there a staff report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The purpose of this project is to correct program deficiencies at the Airport Heights Elementary School. There is an existing birch tree grove in the southwest corner of the site, which will be maintained except for the removal of 5 to 7 trees for a staff parking lot. The birch trees will continue to screen the playground and playfield activities. Raised garden beds and a greenhouse are located in the southeast corner of the site. The main building entry will have a raised crosswalk to increase pedestrian visibility and will be appreciated by children and parents. The entry also includes a decorative paved plaza that, along with the raised crosswalk, emphasizes the main entry. A new parent drop-off lane is created along the front of the school with parent and visitor parking. A separated bus drop-off is provided on the south side of the school with designated entry-exit driveways. Rain gardens are indicated along the east and south perimeter of the site to accept runoff from the adjacent paving area. And I assume that the details for that will be included in their next submittal. The division has 3 recommendations for the project, which are on page 4 of the packet.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for staff? Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Ferguson, I just want to clarify, this is the first step in a 2-step process, and this is the non-public hearing, and the next step could be on the consent agenda. Is that correct?
Through the chair, Mr. Leonetti, yes, this is their first review at the commission, and their next review, if everything is okay, will be placed on the concept agenda.
Okay.
I mean consent agenda, sorry.
Thanks.
Do you have any additional questions for staff? Okay, would the petitioner like to come forward, please? And please state and spell your name for the record.
My name is Kevin Denier. The last name is spelled D-O-N-I-E-R-E. I'm a landscape architect with Corvus Design. And with me, I have the project architect, Garrett Bertner, and ASD representative, Mary Carey. So I would just like to go over the design, mainly focus on the landscape and the site. I'm going to try to use the Elmo just for pointing. Hopefully the board on my left is the one that I've put on the Elmo here. I know that's hard to see, but I was hoping we could maybe just reference the board and kind of look at where I'm pointing in reference to the project. The Airport Heights Elementary School is a fully funded school district project. It is an extended renewal project, so it's getting a full renovation as well as additions. There are three different levels that the school district has been doing for renovation projects. The building BLE is a building life extension. The second level is a intermediate renewal. The third level is the extended renewal. That's what we're doing for this project. There's major deficiencies in the facility with no multi-purpose room. There's undersized food service areas. The receiving area is too small for the school. There's 3 locatable portables, I should say, out in the site that house art, music, and English language learners that we want to incorporate into the new school. Kindergartens are undersized at this point. The school lacks space for special ed and support programs, as well as the admin area is a little undersized and needs kind of better location for monitoring. There's the existing site is, I think, a very good example of a neighborhood school. It's residential all around it. There's sidewalks that connect from the neighborhoods to the school along Alder Drive and along 16th Avenue. Also the streets are kind of a low volume traffic for pedestrians for walking. The site amenities existing include the ice rink in the northwest corner, ice rink in the north portion of the site. Northwest corner is a sled hill. There's open play fields, existing playgrounds. There's a trail around the perimeter of the kind of western portion of the site, the west side of the school, and picnic tables and existing vegetation along that southwest portion of the project site. We're planning on improving many different aspects of the site, including parking areas on the south side, which would be staff parking. We'd be cutting into the existing wooded birch grove. There's maybe 70 or 75 existing trees there. We'd cut 6 to 7 of them to put the parking in. The students actually use the birch grove for harvesting sap as a part of one of their science classes. The parent drop-off, we're proposing a parent drop-off on the east side, the Alder Drive side. So we're separating that from the street right away. We're putting that on site. The drop-off is approximately 300 feet long, so there's 14 cars that could stack there at any time. We do anticipate that there'll be cars stacked along, or I guess parked along Alder to drop off students as well, and to prevent or to really focus students to the main entry, we'll have some fencing along Alder Drive on the back of the sidewalk there that would lead them into the main entry. The existing building has two entries, one here to the south and one to the north. We're going to focus the main entrance with a raised crosswalk in that location. The site plan that you see in the board to my left shows in the dark brown is the existing building footprint that would get the remodel. The entire building would be remodeled, and then the lighter brown shows where we're adding on to the kindergarten classrooms on the kind of southwest side, the library space on the west side as well as the MPR room and support facilities on the northwest side. We've also separated the parent drop-off from the bus drop-off. The bus drop-off is now on the south side along 16th Avenue, so we can fit 4 buses along that south side. Existing bus drop had been on the east side along Alder, and now we've separated that from the main entrance and brought it to this secondary entrance on the south side. So buses can come in from either the east or the west into that bus drop-off, and then there's another entry drive that we have proposed on the west side of the bus drop-off where staff parking cars could come in, entrance and exit, so there'll be 2-way there and 1-way for the buses to come in at that driveway. There's pedestrian connections throughout the site. There's 8-foot wide pathways minimum throughout the whole site. There's connections from 16th and Alder, the intersection. We made a nice connection from that crosswalk through up to where the proposed greenhouse is to the main entrance there. We have a total of 72 parking stalls that we're showing on the site. There's a requirement of 46. The new parking spaces or new parking lots are on the south side as well as the east side here. We've provided visual enhancement landscaping along the north, the east, and the south sides of the project site to as per old Title 21 requirements. And we've added flowering trees and shrubs in specific areas related to the playgrounds or main entries. Some of the, I think, more interesting aspects of the project are the fact that this is kind of like this neighborhood, almost like a neighborhood park as well as a neighborhood school. We're preserving a lot of the existing vegetation on the site in the southwest corner. There's a greenhouse that the school recently purchased, and so as a part of their curriculum, they've been doing a lot of agricultural programs, and they have raised gardens existing on that southeast corner, and they're adding the greenhouse in there to enhance those programs and that curriculum. We're also adding some green infrastructure, some rain gardens along the south side where the bus drop is. Water would collect from the parking on the south side as well as the bus loop and go into infiltration basins or infiltration galleries in that location. And on the interior, the new MPR room is going to have a stage that from the inside out, there'll be a stage inside in this location on the west side, back side of the facility of the school. And then we're going to have an outdoor stage and kind of learning little classroom space on just outside the window glazing on the west side of the facility here. And with that, if there's any questions, I can take those now, or we can talk maybe a little bit about the architecture.
All right, so we're open up for questions. Looks like Commissioner Sullivan, you want to start us off?
Hi, Kevin.
Hello.
I just have a few questions with the landscape. So your landscape plan where you have the crosswalk
Yes.
to the main entry, it's showing some trees in the south of that crosswalk. And then the civil drawings, the civil drawings are showing that that is part of the crosswalk, which it ties the 88 stalls into the crosswalk. So yes, so that 88 stalls as your drawing is right now, it's not showing a connection from the 88 to your crosswalk. The civil drawings are showing that connection. So which one is the one that you are trying to go for?
Well, we will have a connection there. This should be the latest. I think this is the latest plan. But from the handicap stalls there, they'll go to the east to that sidewalk and then go to the raised crosswalk.
So there will be a connection.
Yes, that'll be the connection. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes
Okay.
sense. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that there's a connection there. Another of my questions, but I don't know if I should wait. Well, it's about parking. So you are stating that for every 50 square foot of, I think it's 50 square foot of, yes, of multi-purpose room, you need one stall?
Yes.
I'm looking at the architectural drawings, and maybe this is an architectural question. And the multipurpose room is like 2,500 square foot. So you're making the calculations with that. But then I look at the drawings, and maybe the gym at some times is going to function as part of that multipurpose room. So I'm just not clear how you're making the calculations to the parking.
Yeah, I think that if you look at the architectural drawing, it's that sheet P101. It shows the MPR as a certain square footage, and it's like, I think it says 1586. And then there's a platform area that says 726 for square footage.
But would the gym have a partition that sometimes gets open and it's being used as a multipurpose room?
I think there was that, advantage of opening up the wall would collapse, and you could have, there would be that flow from the gym into that multipurpose space, yes.
So would the calculations of parking need to integrate that area?
We weren't anticipating that, no. And I don't know if you could help clarify that, Garrett. The multipurpose room is defined, yeah.
And please state and spell your name for the record, too. Sure. Thank you.
Hi, Garrett Burtner, last name Burtner. So the calculation's based on the multipurpose room area. The gym and the multipurpose room obviously serve different functions in the school. By making a connection, we give them greater flexibility for different types of events. But the calculation right now is based on the multipurpose room as a minimum, and then there's, as he mentioned, there's quite a few spaces on top of that, which
Like 22 or something.
which meet really the staff needs plus the anticipated daily visitor needs. So that's the best I can do on that one at this point.
I mean, I'm assuming that you guys have events right now and they use the gym to hold people as a multipurpose room. What happens with the parking that they have right now? I mean, it's very minimal.
They fill up the neighborhood street parking.
Okay, and there's the neighborhood is fine with having. I mean, there's always an issue with schools of like, I don't want them to park here, but what's the reaction of the neighborhood?
Well, when we've been to the community council with this proposal, they were really pleased to see that we were adding parking on the site and really handling, especially the drop-off and busing on site instead of on the street, because in the peak times at drop-off and pickup, things get really congested on both Alder and 16th. They park in the stripe median, parents do, and you have kids kind of running across traffic, and it's not a good situation right now. So they were pleased to see additional parking and some relief for that street side parking.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any additional questions for the petitioner? Commissioner Sahil?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple of questions. The track that you're proposing, is that going to be a paved surface? What kind of surface will the track be?
It is an existing paved surface right now.
Okay, so it exists as is.
Yeah.
Okay. On the, I guess it would be the south side of the building, the site plan that you have up here indicates a paved fire lane going through, and then on the civil drawings you indicate that you're going to have some reinforced turf and some narrow sidewalks. So which one is the current plan?
Initially, we were talking about using like a grass paver in areas where we didn't, where it was fire lane, where it wasn't play space. We're working with ASD on, how do they maintain that. It may end up being an asphalt pavement just for ease of clearing and keeping that fire access clear.
Okay, so we'll see that on the final design then?
That's
whatever
correct,
that
yes.
resolution is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then I guess I would say that, I think you guys have made some great improvements here. I think the improvements to the building look great, and the site improvements are going to be a big benefit to the school and in the neighborhood, particularly the parent drop-off area. I think that's going to work out well for you. One of my concerns is the bus area, and is that big enough? And have you looked at the number of buses that arrive there in a space for 4 sufficient?
That's what we designed it for, was 4. They have 4 currently, and that's what their needs were. So we are making sure that those all fit in there.
How many buses arrive there now?
I believe it's 3 or 4, and I think they have maybe 3 full size and a half size, something of that nature.
Okay.
So we did meet with ASD Transportation and go through that at some length.
That's smaller than normal. Most
It is,
schools
yeah.
have 9.
They have a lot of foot traffic at the school because of the neighborhood.
Okay, that's awesome. And I think you have some help there.
My name is Mary Carey. I'm the project manager on the project, and we have been working significantly with our transportation department and city transportation, and actually I believe there is room for one additional bus on here. We had lengthened it out for that flexibility, but this is primarily a walking school, and therefore the strong walking connections that we've been doing.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you. Commissioner Leonetti?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess my first initial comments are that it looks like a pretty good plan, and it seemed pretty technically sound, and I commend you guys on that. I had a lot of the similar questions about the track and the visual enhancement and visual enhancement landscaping is, I think, good that you put it on the northeast and south. And I did have a question about the 13 parking spaces. I guess overall, I think it's important to have visual enhancement landscaping around the new parking, and I think that's what you're doing. It's just not clear on if any of it's existing and being reused.
If it's existing parking, you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually a good question, because there is actually on the northeast side as well as that northwest side, there's existing pavement there. On the northeast side, I think it may have been perpendicular. We're proposing to make it angled parking, and we're going to need, like what is required, the 8-foot wide bed on that east side to incorporate our visual enhancement landscaping.
Okay, so that's not already there right now. It's going to be.
There is pavement, yes, on both the northeast and northwest sides.
But landscaping, there's no existing.
There's nothing there, yes.
Cool, thanks. That's good. So I will likely include that as a condition unless there's some caveat that you guys would prefer not to. It sounds like you have it covered. It's just a matter of it showing up and then progressing to the next stage and checking it off for requirements of code. So the track is existing and you're not removing any vegetation from the grove or improving the track in the grove?
We will have to sort of realign the track, yes.
Oh, you will realign the track?
Yes. In order to put the proposed parking on the south side, we're going to realign a portion of the track. It's probably, I don't know what the length of it is, but inside the grove, when you get toward the west side of that parking lot on the south, that's where our realignment will occur.
Okay. And the snow storage was a condition. So what's the process for the northeast parking and the parent drop-off and the bus drop-off for snow storage?
Most likely, there's not much space over there, so they're going to have to haul it off.
Okay.
They'll push it temporarily and then they'll haul it away. We do have space on, the south parking lot as well as the northwest parking lot to push it and store it. But in the locations on the east side where we're going to have, it's going to be so active there every day, they're going to have to move it and then take it off.
Okay. Let's see here. That's it. No further questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Winchester?
Thank you very much. Through the chair, a couple of questions. Again, I think it's really remarkable some of the things you've been able to accomplish here. On the 16th Avenue side, on the south side, on some of your landscape and civil plans, shows a center meridian, and that's existing?
That is existing, yes.
Okay. Because it's basically blocking your access into your south parking lot, so it means that you're only going to end up with one-way access to that parking lot, effectively only going west on 16th Avenue?
I think that I thought we had that.
Modifying that in the final plan?
I don't think we're going to modify the median.
Okay.
Let me just look at the plans here.
I'm looking at Plan L101. Maybe there's another plan that changes that.
No, I think we are. I think we are keeping that. So then, as a way in, it would be, you'd be coming from the east to get into that
Then
parking.
the only way in and out of that parking lot is going to be going west on 16th Avenue.
So as a bus, you can access it east or west because the existing island stops before there. And then what you're saying is that at that other driveway, we'd have just an entrance coming from the east going west.
That's correct. It's just a little bit of a jam up. Maybe you can talk to the municipality and see if that can be modified. I don't know.
It is staff parking, so there won't be it won't be as active as like out on the parent drop off on the east side. So there will be, they'll be in there before school starts. The teachers will all be there and parked. So it'll be really, I don't think as an inconvenience because it's not, the parents or our parent visitor parking.
Did you have something, Mary?
And this is Mary Carey from the school district. We have had major meetings with the city and the community council on this too. The community council felt it was very important to keep the islands where they were in the location that they were, and with the way how we've arranged the staff parking, we assume that this was not an inconvenience to the staff because they also have another choice for parking behind the building, so we thought that might work its way out. And the buses were fully cognizant of this, and they said they were very flexible for how they could handle their designated turns in and out of this.
Okay. Just thank you. It sounds like you covered that.
Yeah, I do think it
seemed like a potential issue.
It was a trade-off because we did look at a smaller bus loop as well to make sure that we could do that turn left or right in.
Yeah, understood. Just to follow up on those issues, this being a predominantly walking to school or kids arriving from ages 5 through whatever, 12, one of the questions I guess I have is there doesn't seem to be any designation of crosswalks or how you're addressing how the students are going to get to and from the school. You address a fence along the line, in other words, to push them to the main entry, but knowing that kids come to the school pretty much from all over, has there been any discussion about how to maybe coordinate that a little bit further beyond the site that you have control of?
There are in this neighborhood, there's extensive crosswalks. There's red markings in the crosswalk and then white stamped concrete on the edges to really delineate these crossings. So throughout the neighborhood, that is happening. And there are existing sidewalks along 16th and along Alder.
Yeah, I'm more concerned about the kids crossing the street to get to the school. And so the question is, if you have existing crosswalks here, it'd be great to show them so we could kind of get a sense of how people are coming to and from, how the kids are going to get to and from the school, or are you adding any crosswalks? Like, for instance, is there one at your main entrance now that maybe goes directly across the street at that point, or is that been?
This is Mary Carey School District. We've had sort of a major analysis to find out where the kids walk from and the local knowledge. And we did significant, there are crossing guards that's on the corner of
16th and Alder.
16th and Alder, and actually we're in conversations with the city right now because we do have some puddling of water there during breakup, and we're encouraging them to work on getting that in a better situation. But that's where predominantly the number of students come from. And we, at this point, we're not looking at crossing any streets when we're not at a very contained area with a stop sign at this point. But we'll note on our future drawings where the crosswalks are, and we will be working with our safe routes to school to make sure that we continue that process.
That's wonderful. Just wanted to double check. I mean, I'm sure that those things happen, but certainly the corner appears to be a major place where the students are coming from, but the fact that there's 2 full blocks of open street, a lot of kids are not going to walk all the way down to the corner and then cross and come back. They're going to cross in the middle of the street and whatever. So just addressing that just seems to be something that, you have to move beyond the site a little bit, and you've done that. So it'd be great to see that. I am, too, the issue of snow storage seems to be one on that front area, and to say that it's going to get hauled, I think it's appropriate that the school district acknowledge that, because it's not always in their maintenance plan to say, We're going to acknowledge that we're going to haul snow from this particular area on a school. Somewhere down the line, somebody says, oh, I didn't know that, and we didn't have money in the budget to do that, or whatever it is. So it'd be really great if the school district acknowledged on this particular scenario that they don't have room on site to store the snow, and that they're going to do a long-term maintenance. Maintenance people are going to acknowledge that they're going to have to haul, because there's really no way to deal with that.
Right.
And I acknowledge
Yeah.
you've got a tight site, existing conditions, et cetera, et cetera. I think it's just important that everybody know that's part of what's going on. Just one other last comment. I know that we're doing the perimeter landscaping and the reasons why that we do it. I guess one of the cautions is that you've got this main entrance here, and if we do, and at the corners, is that we push a lot of the students to those areas, and then we've got a street out front where cars are going to be buzzing back and forth, parents dropping off, et cetera. We might look at putting the landscaping, and I know this may or may not fit the guidelines, but set the landscaping back from the actual entrance and give yourself a little space, so that the driver on the street can see the kids coming out on the sidewalk, to get to the sidewalk, rather than a kid running out that sidewalk and there's a big tree there that's blocking the view of a car coming down the lane. Just, kind of give yourself a little bit more space around those places where you've identified that students are going to come and go from the site, or you're basically funneling them to.
That's an excellent comment, and I would love to work with staff on making that happen, because there is a prescription basically in Title 21, the old Title 21, that says I have to have my trees 20 foot on center. I would be more than happy then to cluster those, group those, so that we can do some of these things, open those spaces up so we do have very clear site lines. And that's what, all these are deciduous trees along the perimeter, and the school district likes to see that. And we want to make it easy for surveillance. We don't want to put evergreens in there so you can't see what's happening or have people hiding behind stuff. So I'm with you on that, and I'd like to make that happen.
Yeah, and perhaps we may add that as a condition to at least take the two, in this particular case where you have two basically streets bordering the school, it isn't like you have a roadway into the school, that we just like to see some relief at those areas where you're definitely going to get pedestrians, to have a site triangle available to make sure that we're taking care of that safety issue for the school district.
Right. Yep, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Leonetti, did you have more?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just a couple of questions on the parking. So you show 72 parking spaces, and the calculation comes out that you need like 40 something. So this site is overparked based on that. Is that accurate?
It's more than what's required.
Okay. And I think that's it. Thanks.
All right. Do we have any additional questions for the petitioner? Thank you.
Thank you.
So the matter now rests with the commission. Can I get a motion to approve? We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Leonetti and a second from Commissioner Winchester. Commissioner Leonetti, would you please state your motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to make a motion for approval, case number 2014-015, concept review of the site plan and landscape plan for Airport Heights Elementary School. With the following, with the recommendations in the staff packet 1, 2, and 3. And I have some findings of facts as well. Findings of facts number 1. plan furthers the Comp 2020 plan goals and policies for policy number 44, 78, and 88. And I guess the number 2 would be that the community council and the neighborhood prefer the landscape islands in 16th Avenue to help direct traffic out of parking lots, or the parking lot. And snow storage is going to be removed, and we can adjust this as needed if it needs to turn into a condition. And that's it for now.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Leonetti. So we have a motion to approve case 2014-0145 with staff recommendations 1 through 3. Commissioner Winchester, would you like to speak to your second?
Madam Chair, yes, I am intending to support the motion. I would like to propose an amendment, and the amendment that I would like to add is a condition 4 to provide adequate site triangle from pedestrian access points to be determined by the landscape architect and the staff to set the trees back so we have site triangles at those points where we have major pedestrians entering and leaving the site. And doesn't mean we reduce the trees, we just move them and cluster them. I guess, I know I didn't write that very well, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. But basically to move the trees and slightly cluster them enough to ensure that we get adequate site triangles at those key pedestrian access points.
Thank you. Sorry, we currently have a motion to amend the main motion, which would create condition number 4 to set the trees back at the main entrances of the site to create site triangles. So for safety issues. Do you want to specify maybe more where this exactly on the site you're talking? Like, is there corners like northwest or something we can?
Well, okay. Specifically at the corner of 16th and Alder, and at the main entrance, and then if there are any other identified locations that the school district has that students are frequenting, accessing the site. But those 2 for sure.
So condition number 4, to set trees back to create side triangles at the entry of the building as well as the corner of 16th and Alder, and additional locations may be recommended by the school district based on their findings. So we have a motion to amend from Commissioner Winchester, a second from Commissioner Leonetti. Any additional discussion? Looks like Commissioner Sullivan.
Yes, and it's back to the parking. I don't want to be hard on this. I understand that the site, it's you're having problems even to find the snow removal. I'm just looking the way that you are counting the stage and the multi-purpose room as the area, when in reality the gym is going to be used. If maybe in your next come up here, you could not use the stage area and maybe find a way to, because you're close. I mean, I'm just counting the gym could be your sitting people sitting there. If you're using that area, then that comes to 67 and you have 72. So just change the word so it's right. And because as it is right now, I mean, here it says Title 21, or Title 21 requires 1 car for every 50 square foot. So just adjust that areas and how you're calling them, and then I think it will be right.
Okay, so we'll go back to the motion to amend that we're on. Is there any additional discussion on creating the site triangles? Is there any objection? Did you want to speak? No? Okay. Okay, so now we are back to the main motion, and the motion is to approve case 2014-0145 with staff conditions 1 through 3 and condition number 4 that has just been added. So additional discussion for the main motion. Commissioner Leonetti?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to know the thoughts of other commissioners on a condition regarding providing visual enhancement landscaping along the perimeter of the site where the new parking lots are adjacent to the property line. If that's a concern to other commissioners or if they think that it's just going to happen. And if I have no comments, I will add it as a condition.
Sorry.
Commissioner Winchester, did you want to?
I guess I'm confused a bit. When you say perimeter landscaping adjacent to property lines, it looks to me like they have landscaping at the property lines.
It was addressed in the staff comments.
I'm sorry.
And there was past cases where it was imperative that the drawing actually said visual enhancement landscaping to meet the intent of code, and that's the direction that I'm trying to take it. I think that the intent is there and the drawings show that they have visual enhancement, but it's not labeled as in the other cases.
Understood. You're just trying to put the label on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody understands what it is, but let's make sure we know.
Right.
Okay, I got it.
Standard, so.
Commissioner Sawhill?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I guess I wouldn't have any objection to the additional condition, but I don't believe it's necessary. Based on my review of the concept landscape plan, I think the plan proposed meets the visual enhancement landscape requirement. Staff's analysis of it is that it also meets the visual enhancement landscape requirement. So I guess it doesn't hurt, but I see it as being redundant. So those are my comments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Oh, Commissioner Leonetti?
Thank you. Yeah, that was good clarifying. I will omit that as a condition. Another one for conditions, there was discussion about sidewalks and crossings and crosswalks. I did not add it as a findings of fact, but there was discussion about just showing the existing crosswalks. It sounds like that it's covered. Should we put it as a finding of fact or as a condition?
Commissioner Winchester?
I think that we could just add it as a finding of fact, that they'll come back with that. I don't know if this is a condition, it's just more that, and they've already said that they're going to do that on the final plans for us, so, and that's on the record. So, but yeah, findings of fact would get it locked in. That they agreed they're going to bring back the final plans with all the crosswalks shown for us to look at.
Okay, so we'll add then a findings of fact number, whatever we're on, 3, that there's existing crosswalks to the school, and there are no new crosswalks intended per the plan, and they will be shown on future drawings.
All right, do we have any additional discussion? Do we have any objection for approval of case 2014-0145 with staff conditions 1 through 3, condition number 4, and with we have the 3 findings of facts? Okay. Okay, case 2014-0145 passes. Okay, so now we are moving on to case 2014-0147. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Project Management and Engineering is requesting approval of the 65% design plans for the Eklutna River Bridge Replacement Project. This project will construct a new 254-foot bridge over the Eklutna River in the same alignment as the existing bridge and upgrade the Old Glen Highway between Thunderbird Drive and Eklutna Lake Road to current DCM standards for a rural collector. The Planning and Zoning Commission did review and approve the draft design study report on March 3rd of 2014. The overall goals of the landscape design are to limit impacts to existing vegetation where feasible, and to provide new native landscape plantings as appropriate based on the extent of disturbance for the bridge reconstruction project. The proposed landscape plan includes paper birch and Colorado spruce with grass mixes sourced locally and hardy in this region. Graded slopes and areas impacted by construction will be reseeded with no-mow seed mix and are expected to be seasonally maintained to provide for safe sight lines. The Colorado green spruce will be planted opposite the realigned driveway to the trailhead to provide visual separation from the adjacent utility easement upon exiting the Thunderbird Falls parking area. Also, obstructions will be removed from within the site distance triangle. This will include removing cottonwood saplings and also resetting the existing large boulders to reduce their height and at intervals to allow views into the space. The the new tree plantings will provide a visual buffer from the parking area and will blend in with the existing forest. The project, it does improve pedestrian safety. An 8-foot wide paved path will accommodate both pedestrians and bicyclists. The paved path is separated from the travel lane. The path is extended as a 10-foot wide pedestrian path with a 6-foot raised curb atop the bridge that is separated from the travel lane by 4-foot wide shoulder on one side. There is an effective use of Winter Cities design by providing snow storage, using bridge surfaces that do not require special equipment. It provides year-round access for non-motorized use. The pathway will be graded so as to prevent snow melt from pooling within the onto the walkway surfaces. And the 8-foot pathway is designed to allow removal of snow from the bridge deck onto the Old Glen Highway. No lighting is proposed for the project to preserve the night sky. And the streetscape provides separate areas for different uses. The department does recommend approval of the project, subject to one condition on page 6 of the packet. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like we already have a question for staff. Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. O'Brien, it says here that the project went before P&Z in 2004.
Through the chair, Mr. Leonetti, that's an error. It was this year.
2014? Oh,
yes.
Great. So what were the conditions of approval on that case?
Madam Chair, Mr. Leonetti, the condition is, the resolution is included on pages 83 and 84, and the condition reads, all construction and improvements related to this approval shall be substantially in compliance with the pre-final design study report dated January 2014 on file with the Planning Department.
Great, thank you. And then one more question. No, that's for someone else. Thank you.
Commissioner Condon?
Yes, Madam Chair. I have a question about, there were 4 alternatives for this bridge design, and how was it that the 2-span bulb T design was the design approved?
see.
I mean, on page 1 of your packet, it
Yeah.
says it provides the lowest cost to construct and maintain and can be constructed in the shortest time. So this was purely a financial consideration?
I would have to defer to the petitioner. I got that information from the packet, and that was from the information provided. There may have been other considerations that went into the selection because there were public meetings held throughout this particular design, and there were comments that were received from numbers of review agencies, which are included in the in attachment A for the 65% design agency review comments. So I do need to defer to the applicant or their representative. They probably have a lot more knowledge of that than I do.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any additional questions for staff? Okay, thank you. All right, well, sounds like you're already ready up here. Would you please state and spell your name for the record?
Absolutely. My name is Lance DeBernardi, D-E-B-E-R-N-A-R-D-I with R&M. And we've basically been working on this project starting midpoint last summer. So a little over a year been working on this project. And to answer your question directly, this project is being developed in partnership with the Alaska Department of Transportation, and they are actually the ones that are doing the bridge design. And so they came up with 4 bridge alternatives that you see before you, and those bridge alternatives are based on a couple of different criteria. Constructability is probably one of the largest ones, cost, ease of maintenance, and then as far as ease of constructability, I guess, might be another way to say that. So with those 4 different alternatives, they put together a selection report, and in that selection report, they weighed the pros and cons of each one of the different bridge types. And we had a meeting. It wasn't decided in a vacuum. There was a kind of evaluation meeting, if you will, and we went through all the pros and cons with members of the project team, the DOT, and staff, and the decision was made to pick the 2-span concrete bulb T deck bridge structure type. And that was picked, ease of constructability. The intent was that we try to construct this thing as fast as we could to minimize construction costs. So we wanted to pick a bridge type that could be constructed in a single season. And so this type of bridge is very common to all the contractors. They can cast the girders themselves here in Anchorage, although I say that with a caveat from the standpoint that the contractor chooses to go outside and buy them from somewhere in Seattle and barge them up here, and it's a cheaper price, then that will probably happen. But the intent is that local contractors have the ability to fabricate and construct this bridge. Talked a lot with the folks from the maintenance, and obviously a concrete type bridge is a little bit easier to maintain than any kind of steel bridge that requires an extra level of inspection with all the joints and the connections, whether they're pinned, bolted, whatnot, and the corrosion protection that has to go along with that on a steel structure. And so the Eagle River Maintenance Subversa Board, was consulted on that, and they agreed with the selection of the low maintenance alternative, recognizing that their budgets as far as maintenance, never really increases. It stays the same or it goes less. So that's how we arrived at the selection of the 2-span concrete.
So it's essentially a decision made with the DOT, with your project team, with maintenance people?
Correct. And we also heard comment from the public. This road's been closed for 2 years or so, and the comment they basically said is, get it done now, fast, cheap, basically is what we heard. They want it restored, they want their access restored, and they want it to be cost effective.
I'm assuming this was the Thunderbird subdivision people who were
Yeah,
most vocal about that?
Yeah, there was a resident or someone that travels that road. I don't know exactly where they were, but, you know, the essence of the comment was, you know, let's get it done cheap, and let's get it back open to traffic.
Right, but you're aware of the fact that this bridge qualifies for a National Historic Landmark.
I am aware of that, and we had a pretty extensive process by where we entered into a memorandum of agreement between the stakeholders, and that memorandum of agreement came up with a framework by which there were a number of components to that agreement that would document as well as mitigate for the fact that this bridge was going to be taken down.
It's going to be photographed and placed in a museum somewhere.
Actually, what will happen, the three components to the MOA were a cultural resource survey. The second is a mitigation aspect and has to deal with the interpretive panels that are going to be put out there in the park themselves. And I think you have those in your packets, so you can kind of see what that effort was involved. And then the third one is a photo documentation, and that was completed 30th of September. And then all that documentation will be prepared according to the Habs Hares, and I think it's going to live here in the library once all the documentation, the photos, and all the research and all that's been compiled. It will live here in the LUSAC library.
Yeah, well, as a finding of fact, I'd like to bring up the Chugiak Eagle River Comprehensive Plan update
Joel,
dated.
one sec. I want to just do it. We're a little bit out of order, and so I want to make sure we're going the right way. So you have time to present to us, and then we can essentially start asking you questions. Your time doesn't necessarily go away. You can have back once we're done with questions. Did you have more you actually wanted to go over in your presentation of the project, or are you ready for us to kind of start asking you questions?
Yeah, I guess I just jumped
I know.
into
We're helping you get out of order, so I'm just going to try to bring it back if we can, and then.
Well, I mean, yeah. So I guess I started off with a little bit of how we got to the selection of the alternative, and then we went ahead and went through 3 rounds of public meetings. The third at the 65%, which we just held on September 4th, was our last open house meeting. Probably some of the newer developments that have happened beyond what you see here is we were able to secure the additional public use easement width to go ahead and construct the pathway as it is proposed in the plans. There's only a single landowner in the project. It's a native Eklutna Inc. And so we're able to work with them to go ahead and actually secure the additional width in the public use easement to construct that. Completed the photo documentation, and the last one is the open house. So those are the more recent events that are probably not communicated and packed in front of you right now.
Okay. So does that conclude your presentation? Can
Pretty
we start
much.
asking
I
questions?
think
it's,
okay. I don't know
That's
what else
fine.
to say.
Your time will hold. It'll still be here. If we get done with questions, you can. So you want to use it for rebuttal? It's not like it goes away. So.
Okay. Well, I got one other thing here, if I may. Then I also have a couple of team members on board that I'm going to rely upon if the questions get a little bit too down in the details here. I have Juan Lee, who's our public involvement planner, and I also have Johnny Hayes from Bettisworth North on there to help with the team. So they were all instrumental in pushing each aspect of the project forward.
Great. Well, thank you. So I'm going to give you back your time for your questions, Commissioner Condon, and we'll.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
Yes, in reference to the comprehensive plan for Chugiak and Eagle River. If we go to sort of jump over to Roman numeral 5, what is it? Objectives 2, policies, strategies 3. A, support the preservation of historic sites and structures in order to maintain a sense of continuity with the past. And this goes back to the choice of the two-span decision to deviate from a very beautiful metal arch construction that has been a part of the community's history for 80 years and qualifies as a National Historic Landmark. And yet, one of the proposals that your team and DOT passed over was a metal arch design in favor of dropping, 3 4-foot diameter caissons into the riverbed and bringing the columns up to the roadway. So I would say that this proposal deviates substantially from, just that one part of the comprehensive plan. And I would like to reference several other problems with this design in relation to the comprehensive plan for that area. If we look at land use, this would be page 36 of the comprehensive plan. Community design, goals. Encourage well-planned development that creates a sense of place. Okay, on to objectives. A, encourage site architectural designs that complement the scale and character of existing development. Objectives 2C, preserve and enhance the identity of established community areas. G, encourage the use of design guidelines to create attractive buildings that are suited to the environment. I'll continue. B, under policies and strategies, page 38 of the comprehensive plan. B, protect features that are valuable to community identity and the natural and aesthetic qualities. Moving on to E on page 48 of the comprehensive plan, parks, open space, greenways, and recreation facilities. 2A, protect environmentally important or sensitive areas, including stream and river corridors and scenic vistas. So I'm seeing a bridge design that deviates substantially from an existing historic design that is dropping piers into a river corridor. And I'm just concerned that this project has let the concern for financial considerations override many of the policies that are embodied in the comprehensive plan that the Urban Design Commission is charged with overseeing.
I guess, through the chair, when we looked at these things, we also looked at some of the visual view sheds that were out there. And there's really, outside of, this time of year, you really can't see the bridge. To see any kind of aesthetically arch out there as a new construction item from anywhere, unless you actually leave the park or leave the roadway and trespass onto Eklutna Inc. land to see either in the canyon or to see the bridge. If it's this nice, elaborate, ornate structure, you can't really see it from the highway driving down the 65. And if you're walking on top of it, you really don't get the essence of the bridge looking over the bridge rail. You can't really see that from anywhere along the project unless you're on Eklutna Inc. land. One of the things that was important for the Eklutna Inc. people, as far as the tribe and the people that are out there, the sense of trespass that's out there and the people that use the existing bridge as a attractive nuisance and a recreation opportunity. There's a rope swing out there. Kids are swinging off this thing like it's a a southern Georgia rope swing into a river, you know. There's been people that have hurt. I think there was an article in the paper not too long ago that somebody got hurt out there on the bridge, probably doing something they shouldn't be and where they shouldn't be. So those two things were also considerations as far as selection of the type of structure that we have. Yes, we are putting piers down in the bottom, but they're not going to be in the flowing water. They're going to be above the 100-year flood event, so they're not in the water itself. It's it's in the floodplain, but it's not going to have any impact or change to the water surface elevation or cause any kind of detrimental scour or anything like that to affect the foundation or the integrity of the bridge itself. So I guess, you know, looking at this staff report, you know, one of the things that we're charged with is trying to accommodate current future needs in the area in a cost-effective, timely, and efficient manner. And so that's what we thought we were trying to accomplish with the selection of the bridge type that we had.
Thank you. I just got a note. If you could talk a little bit more into the microphone, that would be great. I guess they're having a hard time picking you up. Thank you.
Loud enough.
I know. I thought you were too. So I apologize. Do we have any additional questions? Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I share some of the similar concerns as Mr. Condon that it's a historical bridge that's getting replaced by not anything related to a historical bridge or any sort of architectural similarities or anything. I do see that there's the kiosk in the parking lot. I think it's an opportunity that's missed, especially if it's viewed, as you said, from the, I think you said Eklutna or Denina land. I think those people have been here for a long time, and maybe it's time for them to look at something that they like instead of some sort of concrete, instead of a kiosk that describes it. So I think Mr. Condon's references to the comprehensive plan are valid, and it's just a matter of if more than two of us think that.
I guess through the chair, you know, in addition to that is another response, you know, the municipality does not have a lot of bridges in their inventory. And one of the elements to this, and I know this probably kind of is outside of what your concern is, but I understand, is, you know, I'll say it's the standardization. You know, I know that's bad and that has some connotations that go with it, but as a department, the Department of Transportation tries to have kind of everything somewhat uniform, and that cuts down their maintenance costs. I mean, if someone hits the rail, they have rail that will fit a bridge in Cooper Landing or a bridge that's up on the park somewhere by Cantwell, you know. So with that as a background, and that was another consideration for selection of this type of bridge, is that we had elements that would be something that could be replaced and easily maintained, snow removal, I mean, all the aspects that for the bridge on the surface, take into account those types of considerations or constraints.
I agree. Those concerns are there, and they should be part of the design, and they should be part of the design process. It shouldn't be a custom bridge from the kilt, but it should incorporate some sort of cultural sensitivity to what's going on there and reflection of the past, rather than just cookie cutter, this is the DOT typical bridge that we put everywhere and it's easy to build. And all of those safety precautions can be built into a well-designed bridge, and it just takes that little effort to say this is what we're doing, rather than, oh no, we're just doing a cookie cutter DOT bridge. No further questions. Thanks.
Thanks. Commissioner Winchester?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as someone who was 12 years old and used to play on that bridge, and is fairly familiar with the situation before the bridge was there, which my parents and grandparents dealt with. The question really is, the Eklutna natives don't appear to have objected to this change in this bridge. Is that correct?
That would be a correct statement.
And let's just say, for the record, Eklutna natives here were thousands of years before there was a bridge here, correct?
Okay.
So the bottom line is that bridge has only been there for 80 years, and I know that seems like a long time, and it certainly puts itself in the position of being a historical bridge that I will remember. The question is, what is the different, when the bridge is now needing to be replaced, we've evolved a new bridge design, is that correct? I mean, the new bridge design, the bulb T concrete bridge, is a more effective, lower maintenance, less expensive, more green in terms of long-term maintenance and other values that we bring today than a steel bridge. Is that correct?
That would be correct. And in addition, seismic considerations.
Absolutely seismic considerations, and that is the seismic zone 4. So it seems to me that I'll bet I understand what aesthetics we might begin to give to this steel structure. The question is really, what are the aesthetics of a concrete bridge? We make it sound like it's nothing, but it is a pretty unique marvel of engineering today to see the fact that we can take concrete tube structures with a lot less materials and energy usage and create a span a lot more economically than we could when we were doing it out of carbon steel and other things years ago with rivets and other things. Is that correct?
That would be an accurate statement.
So for me, I guess, and a lifelong Alaskan, and probably driven that bridge more than anyone around this table, I'm not going to oppose this bridge. I think that the value to the people there that need the bridge, the ability to produce a new, modern, structural, seismically proven, current design, marvel of engineering, and green in terms of the least damage to our environment to create is a better solution than hearkening back to something that might have been an older solution. Yes, might have been more aesthetically appealing to some folks, less to others, but I'm going to weigh on the side of the things I just mentioned. Thank you.
Commissioner Sawhill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I would just like a little more explanation of the process you went through. I'm assuming you had to consult with the State Historic Preservation Office on this project, and I'm assuming you tried to figure out how to save this bridge, and that couldn't happen. And can you kind of, I think it's sad when something as cool as this bridge goes away. This is a cool bridge, and so it's I understand it's closed, it's unsafe. We've got to do something. And can you just describe the process you went through with the historic nature of this and the things you did to mitigate that?
Yes, certainly. We had there were 3 signing members to this memorandum of agreement. SHPO was one of them, the MOA was one, and then Eklutna was the other one. There were consulting parties that were also signatories to this agreement. State Parks was the other one. The other 3 or 4 are escaping me right now. They were more on participating without any kind of real, I don't want to say approval authority. They were consulting from a stakeholder perspective. So we circulated this memorandum, and we went through, I think, 3 or 4 revisions to this memorandum of the different agencies and the different stakeholders wanting to add things into what the final deliverables, we'll call them, that account for the fact that we're taking this structure that's eligible for the register off and basically, just taking it down, taking it away. And so there was a lot of work that was already done as far as photo documentation and that kind of effort when this was our federally funded project back in, I believe it was in early 2000s. That effort will be reflected in the research components of the effort that we're doing right now. Everybody kind of, how do I want to say this? They put together the things that they felt were important from their perspective as a stakeholder that they would like to see, knowing that the bridge was going to go away. And Eklutna Inc. had a very important role in that they want to be able to tell their story about this area and about the bridge and about the river, and that's reflected in the panels, in the interpretive panels. SHPO signed off on our cultural resource survey. They agreed with the findings and the conclusions of that. They had people from the municipality's archaeological section and the SHPO were members of the working group. We had 3 working group sessions with a larger body. Then we had a single breakout working group session where it was just the people that were the technical people that were involved with the content and how the panels read and the layout of the panels, and those are all in agreement with how State Parks does a lot of their interpretive panels across the board. And we try to keep that theme that's out there right now with the theme that we're proposing here, along with the theme that's out there, like at the trailhead on the Eklutna Lake, back in the Eklutna Lake. So we try to tie all those things together with what we thought were elements that would capture the project. After our 3rd working group session, or 3rd working group meeting, continue to make revisions to the panels and the content and the graphics and all that just via email. And like I said, the final element is this photo documentation that was completed on the 30th of September. And with that, there's a big historical research aspect of the documentation of the photos according to Habs Harris, and then the actual, I think this thing's going to go in Arliss. It's where it'll live.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Leonetti?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just had a question on, you had a reference to, the panels and that they're the way that the state does a lot of their panels. And I think the panels are well done. I'm not discarding those. I just am interested in how the new bridge and how we can make the new bridge a similar experience as the existing bridge is. So people recognize this bridge like, yeah, that's a cool bridge. Oh, yeah, that's been there forever. When they drive across it, when they look at it barely from an angle. And now they're going to drive across the bridge as currently designed and shown here, and it seems like it's a similar bridge to every other bridge in the state, and it could be anywhere in the state. So is there any opportunity to put into the abutments or anywhere some sort of a cultural spin on it or a reflection of the past, so that when somebody drives across it, then they recognize that this was a cool bridge and we're trying to continue this further, rather than, oh, I got to pull over to the parking lot and stop, look at the bridge, or look at the panels.
We did, through the chair, we did look at topside improvements that we could do to convey that sense. And a lot of them had to do with the treatments of the bridge rails, and we looked at 4 different rail options, if you will. But in the end, it really comes down to a risk issue, and I say that from the standpoint of there are layers of or different strata of bridge rails, and I say that from the highest being like crash worthy, crash tested, and it kind of falls down from there, and then it becomes a level of risk of what the owner of the bridge is willing to accept as far as performance if something strikes that rail. The highest being crash tested. It performs under all these national crash standards, and I don't know what they all are off the top of my head, but they test these things all over, and there's different vehicles, and they strike it at different speeds and at different angles and all this kind of stuff. And so we have the crash tested, then we have the crash worthy, which means that it won't perform quite to that level. It's a little bit less, and then you have everything that's less than that. And so we looked at that, and ultimately it was a matter of risk on what would happen if something or someone or a vehicle left the roadway, crossed the shoulder, jumped over the sidewalk, and struck the bridge rail. What would happen? We looked at adding elements that were outside of the crash rail, but then you begin to get into the point of interpretation of like, well, did that element that's hanging out there beyond the crash rail, did it affect the performance of the crash rail in some aspects or another? And is it then an attractive nuisance, somebody wants to go, I'll say bungee jump off or tie something off or swing off of it. It's got this element that adds, an element of risk to someone that wants to do something out there. And so we decided that among the project team and staff that it would be best to just go ahead and take those elements off of the bridge and do something at the site where everybody that comes to the state park can see the panels and get that experience that way. That was the intent.
Okay, cool. So that is a good reference to the guardrails and that sort of thing. On the Glen interchange, as you approach Palmer and go to Palmer, on the east side of the abutment, there's some simple but very obvious metal sculptures, and they're probably the size of us standing here, but looking at it on the abutment, they're fairly small. Is there any opportunity to do something like that on the sides, on an abutment, or before? Because I agree with the railings. There's all sorts of headaches that happen with railings that cause you not to want to do anything that could be decorative there, but
well, there's two things. One, we're not putting any kind of concrete barrier out there, in terms of there's no concrete barrier on the bridge. The bridge rail is an open rail, and so that was done for a couple of reasons, I guess. Primarily, it helps with the snow clearing. The snow can blast through there, or wind can blow through there, and it doesn't provide a visual barrier, for the people that are out there or driving along there. As far as adding anything to like the abutments, and those are going to be underneath the bridge. You're not going to be able to really see those from on top. There isn't a flat finished face, if you will, that's readily visible from the road or top side that would accommodate or facilitate some kind of panel or graphic.
Okay, so basically there's no opportunity to do anything on the bridge to somehow enhance it a little bit to have some sort of relevance to the past.
Well, I mean, there might be something on like, we have this approach slab, and there's a wall that comes down the length of the approach slab. There might be something that can fit along that section, but that's a very small area. I guess that would be probably, if any if there is any opportunity on the structure, that would probably be something that would be available.
Good evening. I'm Johnny Hayes, Hayes, landscape architect on the project. And I really do appreciate the historical context and the argument that the aesthetic is quite a bit different than what exists. One thing that, from somebody who really does appreciate aesthetics, it's a very interesting building. What the existing bridge doesn't afford is the safe opportunity to actually stand on the bridge and look down the canyon. Nor does it afford safe travel across the bridge from a vehicular standpoint with crash-worthy guardrails and otherwise. So one of the things that we discussed as a project team was once we sort of started to understand the limitations of decorative rail, if you want to call it that, understanding just from a grade standpoint that you're on top, raised above the abutments, including Inc., it's private land, working with state parks to understand what their needs are and limitations on maintenance and what improvements that they actually want on site, which was somewhat restrictive. The goal was to provide a safe pedestrian path. And so from anybody who stood on the bridge and looked down the Eklutna River Canyon, it's quite spectacular. This will be a 42-inch minimum height rail for bicycle barrier safety and pedestrian fall protection. And anybody is welcome to walk along a safe 10-foot wide sidewalk on the bridge and gaze upon the canyon for themselves. And without something like on the Glen Highway, a DOT project where they spray painted airplanes next to Merrill Field, which isn't a very successful solution, or other decorative rail that rusts or needs paint, or lights that go out and sort of have this urban decay effect. I believe from an aesthetic standpoint and from a project team member that providing project funds for a taxpayer project to serve the purpose and the function that's asked for and allow the opportunity for the larger public to understand their environment by experiencing it was a pretty darn good solution. And to point to the interpretive panels is that working with the group members, it was actually really an incredible experience working with the native village of Eklutna and folks whom were interested in the sciences and the fish and sort of expanding your perspective there. The goal was to address the educational and the impressive aspects of the bridge in the place with most value. And so everybody goes to the Eklutna River Lake. They stop by the Thunderbird Falls trailhead. They hike up the trail, and when you're welcomed upon with graphically attractive, we think, and a plethora of information about the area, about the people, about their language, and about the bridge, I think that's sort of a really successful use of money for a bridge project. Thank you.
Great, thanks for your input. I appreciate it. Appreciate you being here too. Thanks. I don't have any other questions unless there was some other comment that Mr. Deminardi, did I say it right?
I'm sorry?
I was going to say I didn't have any other questions unless there was other comments that you had.
I don't have any more at this time.
Thanks. Commissioner Condon?
Yes. Of those four options, alternatives that you've studied, how far developed were these options? I mean, what I'm looking at in your, this 65% supposedly proposal here is something that could essentially be a boilerplate kind of generation, from other pre-existing bridge designs. So it could essentially come together very quickly from a design standpoint. I have the other three alternatives, and what I'm most interested in is this, the open spandrel steel arch proposal. I would love to see what that is, and I'm assuming you have some sort of preliminary design drawings that would sort of clarify what that option was. I think that would be useful to us to see what was passed over and what was not. And just to go back to, is it Mr. Hayes? Yes. your talk about the Eklutna concern with the fish, and in your package, or on page 13 of your package 25 of staff's, some disadvantages to this alternative is that it requires piers in the valley floor, which is in a flood zone, a larger crane to place the girders. Now, I don't know if that crane has to be down there in the riverbed. And then it says temporary work in the floodplain for construction. So I'm assuming there's going to be a fair amount of disruption to this water course for this kind of pier construction. And it goes on to say, specialty contractors are needed to build the bridge foundation supporting the piers. I mean, are these Alaskan builders, or are you having to bring those up? And I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is that one of the arguments for this bridge is that it's been done before. It can be, the contractors in the area are familiar with this kind of construction. Do we need to are these the same people who are going to do specialty contractors who build the bridge foundation? Are they part of that team? Locals, or are they brought in?
Through the chair, the actual bridge foundations, they're going to be there'll be a drilled shaft type foundation, or they're very close. A drilled shaft foundation is almost similar to a driven pile type foundation. The department has had very good success with the drilled shaft type construction, and they've used an outfit that specializes in these large diameter drilled applications. They are an outside firm, the foundation aspects, and they just sink the shaft, and they have a specialty piece of equipment that basically twists the steel case down till it hits refusal into bedrock, and they set the rebar cage, and they're done.
So do they bring some kind of big tractor down into the riverbed?
That will live in a temporary situation on the floor of the river down there, not on the flowing water, but down on the valley floor. But that's a temporary impact. You would have almost similar types of temporary impacts if you were to do the arch. You need to have a working bridge to work off of in order to set all those steel members as you assemble that, if you will. So there's going to be temporary impacts on the floor of the valley, regardless of the bridge type option. Even if you had this open box that you can clear span it with, you may have to have a temporary bridge to support some kind of trolley that drags that section forward or out. There's going to be some temporary impacts.
Right. The only difference is that with this 3 case on construction, we've got 3 4-foot diameter columns in the middle of the valley that are not temporary.
Correct.
That's all I have.
Commissioner Leonetti?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. DiBernardi, thank you. I'd like to figure out how to write a finding of fact that talks about this MOU. So there was an MOU that was by SHPO, MOA, and Eklutna only?
Correct. There were other participating party signatures. State Parks was one of them, and I can't remember the other. I think there was like 7 signatures. 3 were.
Okay, so let's just leave it at there's a memorandum of understanding or agreement.
I'm sorry?
Is it a MOU or an MOA?
It's a memorandum of agreement.
MOA by land owners?
Well, SHPO was a member.
you want to just list them, you think? SHPO, MOA, Eklutna, State Parks,
Right, and then there was a couple other ones. I don't have the copy of the agreement right in front of me.
land.
I'm sorry?
That's why I was going towards landowners for verbiage, since we don't have it here. Because I don't believe we can add it later.
I think the signatories, the MOA signatories, so folks who sign the MOA would be the easiest way to write that.
Okay, and they are all in agreement with this plan?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Do we have any additional questions for the petitioner? Commissioner Sullivan?
I'm just been sitting here listening both sides, and I agree with both sides. It's a really tough to go one way or the other, but it's also I feel that it's hard to believe that there's not the possibility to, I don't know, maybe the last four elements of each side, vertical elements, extend a little, and then they do the curve and they resemblance what was happening underneath. I just really think that something needs to happen, but I understand the fact of what's the reality. But I don't think it could be that hard to do something as simple as maybe the ends do something as a gateway to welcome people and resembles what once was there. I mean, the same manufacturer could extend the vertical elements and try to create upside down of what was happening just as a memory to the bridge. Have you thought on something as simple as that will be a balance between my peers here?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Again, Johnny Hayes. We did even look at reusing parts of the bridge as part of the interpretive elements, and lead paint was the main consideration for that. It's a reasonable solution, I think, so I'm not opposed to that idea. We did explore it, and our thought was the experience right now is an asphalt two-lane roadway with guardrail, and so if you were to recreate an arched bridge, a nod to it, I suppose, is a reasonable solution, but the only place you would see the arch would be from the new Glen Highway, and if you were trespassing on Eklutna Inc. land. So nodding to the structure as a reasonable solution. We did explore gateways or reusing the structure itself, and then, of course, the decorative rail, looking at what to do, flipping the arch upside down and those sorts of things, and crashworthiness and actually preserving the view off the bridge was more of a concern or a preferred idea, but I believe that's a reasonable solution if it mends fences.
Thank you.
Commissioner Condon?
Yes, Mr. Hayes, you said the bridge is visible from the Glen Highway.
The bridge was, at one time in its early construction, visible from the Glen Highway. Right now, there's mature vegetation on Eklutna Inc. land that precludes sight of it.
Well, that's really interesting, because if we go back to the comprehensive plan under policy strategies, page 38 of the comprehensive plan, item L says, support construction that preserves the scenic beauty of the Glen Highway, a designated national scenic byway. I think this would be an opportunity to, at one point, without the trees in the way, it was a part of the scenery off the Glen Highway, and could conceivably be something of the sort in the future. Yes?
I don't know what the future holds, but I suppose it's a reasonable assumption.
Okay. That's all.
Do we have any additional questions for the petitioners? So you have time to rebut if you want to say anything, or if anybody does. You don't have to, but if you'd like to, you have some time.
I guess in closing, we thought we had a pretty good
approach to the project, one that was inclusive among all the people that would be stakeholders in the project, and allowed them or invited them into the process to come up with input and provide elements that were going to be out there, that were be concrete elements that they had their opinions considered and not just given lip service. And we felt we accomplished that with the MOA and the elements that were interpretive aspects that came out of it, as well as with the cultural resource survey and the photo documentation. And then we also felt we're being responsive to providing a new 75-year design life structure that would perform and restore access back to the folks at Thunderbird, and add an improvement as far as an additional pedestrian facility or pedestrian opportunity between the park and the Clune Lake Road. Right now, you can't, on the older bridge, you couldn't actively walk out there as a pedestrian. You would be standing in a traffic lane. So now we've actually widened that out there and provided that opportunity for someone that wants to experience the Eklutna River and the canyon setting. So we felt like we were doing the right thing here, and our heart was in the right place.
Thank you. Commissioner Lee, did you have a question for the petitioner?
Yep, I did. Thank you. If you're done with your rebuttal, I have one additional question. I've said a couple of strong opinions here, and this dialogue has been great, and it has helped me to understand a little bit more about the project and the process that it has gone through. And I think it's important to document that, and I want to get it right. So I got the findings of facts for the signage for the MOA. The cultural resource survey we should add as a finding of fact. And so that cultural resource survey was completed for the project, and the project is in compliance with it. Is that accurate?
The cultural resource survey was conducted for a couple of different aspects. I guess the first one was any kind of artifacts that we're going to be finding out there or that could potentially be out there, as well as the primary focus was historically there had been anecdotal information that there had been burial sites out there that during the epidemic they had taken and buried some of the people that had died in that area. And I can't say too much because we had to sign a confidentiality agreement that we wouldn't reveal the contents of the cultural resource report. But the conclusions basically invalidate the statement about there being grave sites in the project area.
Okay, I don't want to get into the content of the cultural resource survey. I just want to document that the survey happened.
It did happen.
And for this specific project, and the project is in compliance of the survey.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. I think that's it. Unless there's other relevant findings that people have questions on, that would be the time to ask that, I think, of the petitioner.
Okay. Last time for questions. Thank you, guys. So the matter now rests with the commission. Can I get a motion to approve? The motion to approve from Commissioner Sawhill. And a second from Commissioner Winchester. Commissioner Sawhill, would you care to state your motion, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. In case 2014-0147, I move for approval of the 65% design plans for the Eklutna River Bridge replacement and upgrade of a portion of the Old Glen Highway, subject to staff's condition number 1 on page 6 of the packet.
Thank you, Commissioner Sawhill. So we currently have a motion to approve case 2014-0147, subject to staff's condition number 1. The motion was made from Commissioner Sawhill, seconded from Commissioner Winchester. Commissioner Sawhill, would you care to speak to your motion?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I intend to support the motion. I think this is a difficult project whenever you have an historic structure that's being impacted, and through evaluation and study of the design team, it's been determined it can't be preserved. Coming up with an alternative design that meets the community needs and recognizes the historic structure is a difficult process. I know from experience working with SHPO to get clearance for removal of historic documents is an enormous process and takes lots of meetings. The solution that they've come up with documenting the historic structure and providing panels that share the historic structure and nearby is a standard solution, and I think an appropriate solution in this case. And because of the process that was described to us and my review of the panels that are there that were developed through an extensive process with the shareholders, I think they're appropriate. And I think those sway me that this is a good project and something that we should support. In listening to the comments from some of the commissioners, I fully understand their concerns, and a steel span bridge similar to what was there would have been a preferred alternative. My belief is the expense of that alternative would be substantially higher than the option that was chosen, and the maintenance of that option would be substantially higher. And understanding the budget constraints we're under for capital money and for maintenance money, I can understand why they chose the one they did. I do think it's a missed opportunity. I think in a higher traveled area, a more visible area, I think it would be appropriate to spend the additional funds. But on a low level collector road, I don't think it's appropriate to spend those funds. I would concur with staff's findings that the criteria for our review have been met for the context-sensitive design process, and for those reasons, I will be supporting my motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Sahil. Commissioner Winchester, would you like to speak to your second?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I will be supporting the motion for most of the same reasons Mr. Sahil has mentioned. Also, I wasn't encouraged by the process that you went through, especially the MOA. Very difficult document to achieve with all of those parties signator. I've been through that process numerous times. And I guess I trust that process, quite frankly, having been through it both as an advocate and a person who's dealing with a situation similar to that, to come up with the right solutions, and with all parties involved and all the signatories involved, including the Park Service and others, pretty much trust that those folks have gone through all the steps necessary to meet the criteria that this commission normally would deal with. I would say I certainly accept the problems and the situation in terms of our comprehensive plan. The interest in preserving facilities is a large one for me. But I also reiterate what Mr. Sahil said. This is a collector street. This is off the beaten path a little bit. And I also think that you're actually adding to the current community's capability to actually use that bridge. The views from the old bridge, as you said, you're standing in the middle of the roadway, and other things, and whether you could have duplicated that in a metal bridge, I think very difficult. This is providing a very safe and secure way for bicyclists and pedestrians to actually enjoy that river in a safe way and provide all the access. I think the cultural study was another great piece. Very familiar with the Eklutna Natives organization, worked with them myself, and I'm sure they had a place to play in this, and they would have actually, there would be a statement in here if there was some problem. They'd be here tonight if there was some problem with this bridge. They're not outspoken folks. And they would be the most ones I'd be concerned about, because it's their land, it's their local, it's what they're doing, it's their subdivision, it's their access. And so I am going to support the motion for those reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional discussion, Commissioner Condon?
Yes, Madam Chair, I would just like to state that I will not be supporting the motion. I believe that this is an important issue in terms of historical preservation of an important, beautiful landmark in Alaska, and if the Urban Design Commission isn't going to step up and preserve this kind of very valuable community asset, I think it runs against very clearly stated principles in the comprehensive plan. So I will not be supporting the motion.
Thank you. And Commissioner Leonetti?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will be supporting the motion. I think that all of the previous commissioners have valid points, and one of the most important aspects, I think, of this commission is that we listen to the stakeholders in our community, and it sounds like that those stakeholders in this project are also included in a memorandum of agreement, as well as a cultural resource survey. And for that reason, I support the motion that the project should move forward. And so I will add a couple of findings of facts, just for clarity. One, this is general information that I want documented, very similar to what you see in the last page of the staff packet. The project will construct a new 254-foot bridge over the Eklutna River in the same alignment as the existing bridge and upgrade the Oak Glen Highway between Thunderbird Drive and Eklutna Road to current DCM standards for a road collector. An inspection of the bridge in 2010 revealed that the bridge had deteriorated to a point where it needed to be replaced. Number 2, there were 4 alternatives for the project, and the recommended bridge design, replacement design, is a 2-span bulb T because it provides the lowest cost of construction and maintenance and can be constructed in the shortest time compared to the other 3 bridges. I forgot what number I'm on. 4, maybe. The Oak Glen Highway is designated a collector by OSH and PM&E and has determined that the road collector standards are appropriate.
Can you repeat 3? Sorry.
Was that the last one I did?
Yes.
The Oak Glen Highway is designated a collector by the OSH and PM&E has determined that the road collector standards are appropriate. Number 4, a separated 8-foot wide multi-use pathways along the east side of the Old Glen Highway to meet the needs of the local residents and park visitors, and I believe it also crosses on the bridge. Do we need clarification on the memorandum of agreement and the cultural resource survey, or is that well documented for 2 findings?
If you want to repeat them, that's fine. I think Commissioner Winchester did mention them as well, so wouldn't hurt to mention them again.
Okay, so a memorandum of agreement with signatures have all been in agreement with this plan and approved the plan, so I don't know what number we're on. 6. Cultural resource survey was completed for the project and is in compliance with the current design. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any additional discussion? Can everybody please vote for approval? case 2014-0147 has passed. Does anybody want to break before we go to the last? Quick break, 5 minutes. Be back here at 8. Oh, no, you're done. I'm out. I'm done. I'm out. Okay, it's 8:30, so I'm going to call Ed back. Get this on the road. So we are on now to case 2014-0146. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, Madam Chair. This is a project located in the Mountain View neighborhood. The MOA Traffic Division has identified this intersection as a priority for both vehicular and pedestrian safety and circulation improvements. This project is also identified as a high priority by the Mountain View Community Council. The project goal is to improve vehicular and pedestrian safety, reduce traffic congestion, and improve traffic circulation at the Mountain View Drive/McCary Street intersection. The splinter islands situated around the roundabout will be planted with small shrubs and ground cover plants. The plantings will significantly help to balance the substantial amount of project paving without affecting pedestrian or vehicular function. Pathways are separated from the edge of the road with a planted landscape strip. 3 splinter islands, one on either side of the roundabout along Mountain View Drive and one at McCary Street, reduce the distance a user must cross to safety and provide a refuge for users before crossing an additional lane. The Planning Division didn't include any conditions for the lighting because I thought that we might have a discussion about the lighting, about the purpose of the lighting and whether all 3 pedestrian lights are needed. If not, possibly eliminating them or some of them, or the possibility of adding more pedestrian lighting if it's warranted. It just kind of struck me as kind of odd the way the lighting was designed around the roundabout, in that the pedestrian scale lighting is spaced very far apart, and it kind of loses the effect of pedestrian scale when they're separated that far apart, and kind of a situation where there's one street light height pole, then a pedestrian one, and then another tall street light, and it was an odd configuration, I thought, but it's just me. The design includes house-shaped tubular steel structures in the roundabout. Using an established neighborhood structure in the center of the roundabout adds to the streetscape and reinforces neighborhood identity.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Oh, Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sharon, or Ms. Ferguson, did traffic provide comments in their response in here? It's pretty intriguing how they write their response. It says something to the effect that comments to be addressed and are separate reviews independent of this memo. So are there any concerns from traffic?
I didn't pursue that with them. For these road projects, that's typical of their response, that they are reviewing it under a different process.
Okay, so
and usually they're more technical review comments.
Okay, so there's no comments from them, basically. Okay, thanks.
Have any additional questions for staff? Commissioner Winchester?
Ms. Ferguson, the question I have is, this doesn't have any kind of current stop light or stop sign or anything. I mean, it's basically a stop sign on McCary. Is that correct?
Through the chair, Mr. Winchester, I couldn't tell you where the nearest stop sign is. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, my my understanding is, and from having driven this, is that there's a stop sign on McCary. If you're coming out on McCary to go to Mountain View, left or right, you're at a stop sign. That Mountain View Drive is a drive-through street, and then looks like this kind of one-off ramp coming when you're going west. So, yeah, the concern I always have about these roundabouts is, do they really protect the pedestrian? Thank you.
Any additional questions for staff? Okay. Would the petitioner please come forward? And please state and spell your name for the record.
Thank you. My name's Randy Kinney. Last name spelled Kinney. I'm with Kinney Engineering. I'm the project manager for this Mountain View McCary Safety Improvements Project, intersection project. I also have with me today Elise Huggins, and she's going to give part of this presentation as well when we get to the landscape elements. I think I would like to start with just expanding a bit on what Ms. Ferguson said, and as far as an introduction, and talk a little bit about the purpose and need, some of the alternatives we considered, and how we got to this design we are here today. The project is focused on three main objectives, as Ms. Ferguson said. First of all, it's pedestrian safety and mobility. Mountain View is very much a walking neighborhood. It has one of the lowest, I think the lowest auto ownership in the community of Anchorage. It's heavily reliant on transit. The transit Route 45 uses this intersection, and it's the highest ridership route in the city. The school children that attend middle school and elementary school are not bused, so there's a lot of walkers there. Also, Davis Park and Mountain View Lions Park is very much an attraction, so you have a lot of visitors there, a lot of patrons from the Russian Jack neighborhood that cross over from across the Glen Highway and the McCary Street Bridge, either by bike or by walking, and we've observed a lot of pedestrian crossings at that location. We counted a lot of pedestrians at that location as well, a lot of pedestrians and bikes, over 70 pedestrians or bikes at several times during the day, and so it's a really heavily used intersection by pedestrians. So that's the first thing we're trying to do, is improve pedestrian safety and mobility. There is a vehicle safety element as well. There were 28 crashes at this intersection over 10 years, 2 of which were pedestrian crashes or collisions with automobiles. We found that at least 20 of those crashes could have been corrected with another type of intersection control. At this point, I think I should probably back up and talk a little bit about the existing intersection control. There was a question about that. It is a stop sign on McCary Street, and Mountain View is the through free flow street, and so that's the situation they're in now. The third thing we're trying to accomplish here is some congestion relief for the McCary Street traffic, particularly the northbound left turns at the stop sign. Right now there's a traffic volume on Mountain View Drive of around 10,000 cars per day. We forecast that to increase by 50% to around 15,000 in the next 20 years. McCary Street has 4,000. We expect that to get up to 6,000 or so in the next 20 years as well. So that's, as that traffic increases, that northbound approach under its present stop sign control is going to be having experienced more and more delay. So we're trying to solve that as well. In the future, you could be sitting there for up to a minute. We've calculated. So that's our purpose and need. We looked at 4 alternatives in getting to the one we're looking at today. The first, of course, is basically do nothing. We actually expanded that a bit and used always stopped each approach as an option, and that wasn't going to perform very well under those traffic loads, so that was not considered as viable. We did have an option that just looked at a median refuge on Mountain View Drive, which would provide some pedestrian safety and mobility for those vehicle or pedestrians that cross Mountain View. We looked at a traffic signal, and that would improve both, or I should say, vehicle safety, pedestrian safety, and improve the congestion. But ultimately, we selected a roundabout. The roundabout turned out to be the superior alternative for a number of reasons. First of all, it does provide good pedestrian mobility and safety. The splitter island that's in the middle of each approach is a refuge, and it breaks up the crossing for the pedestrians into two parts, and that's certainly beneficial. The other thing that a roundabout does is it requires all vehicles that are approaching that intersection to slow down to a relatively slow speed in the 15 to 20 mile an hour range. Presently, the speeds on Mountain View Drive are between 35 and 40 miles an hour, so everything that enters that roundabout is going to be going slower, and that, of course, helps pedestrian safety as well. It improves vehicle safety. It reduces the conflict points over a standard intersection. It also, because of the slower speeds, if there is a collision there, it's a reduced severity collision. And finally, the roundabout also provides a very good level of service for both now and in the future. So we concluded that the roundabout was the best alternative that we looked at, and we advanced that to the 65% design that we have today. I want to just give a brief overview of our public involvement efforts for this project. As Ms. Ferguson mentioned, this is one of the highest priorities for the Mountain View Community Council, and to date we've had 3 open houses in the area. We've had 3 visits to the Mountain View Community Council, 1 visit to the Russian Jack Community Council. We've presented to the Mountain View Mountain View Business Roundtable, and we've also presented to the Mountain View Lions Club. And we've had some special meetings with the Mountain View Community Council leadership, and we've had another special meeting with Representative Grunberg. To the landscaping elements, I'm going to ask Elise Huggins to come up here and help me out, but I wanted to lead off with just a comment about the illumination. This roundabout is going to be part of an overall illumination corridor that goes from essentially Taylor Street to Boniface, and it's going to extend the existing theme that's of the pedestrian lighting that is currently in place between the Glen Highway and Mountain View. And so we were going to have essentially a lot of pedestrian lighting along the way. The lighting that we did provide, those pedestrian lights, are meant to be compatible with that overall pedestrian lighting corridor, but they are also engineered to provide illumination for the roundabout as well. And one of the things about roundabouts is that you do need to have them illuminated because you have some obstacles there that without illumination could be a problem in dark conditions. So with that, I think I'll ask Elise to provide a few comments on our landscaping.
And Elise, if you could state and spell your name for the records, and just to give you a heads up, you have about 2 minutes left. So,
my name is Annalise Huggins. I'm with the firm of Earthscape. The last name spelling is Huggins. And I can be quick. The goal with the project for us is always to understand the community, understand the neighborhood we're working in, pick up on what's happening in that neighborhood, the good things, the not so good things, and try to make enhancements to roadway projects wherever possible. With this project, there are some existing trees there. We hope to either transplant or give those trees back to Parks Department. They haven't been there that long, so that is one of the project goals. Otherwise, the basis of the design is enhancing that intersection, bringing trees around, a streetscape planting around the edges to bring the sense of scale down to the roundabout, to guide pedestrians and to guide motor vehicles around the roundabout in a visually
attractive manner. And I can answer any questions about specific plantings.
Well, you made it. You're great. So, do we have any questions for the petitioners? Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Huggins, are you on page 33? Do you want us to pick a option for the apron?
I want you to pick the option that I like.
And which option is that?
We do like the more creative option with the circles. The chevrons have been used, and we thought a little bit different element would be more interesting in the community and be another identifiable character of the community. So our intent, sometimes when you present new ideas to DOT or to the Muni, we've always found that it's good to have a backup idea in case we scare them with our unique idea. And so that's why we presented both options, to tell them that, hey, we know what a chevron looks like, we can do a chevron, but maybe if we play with it a little bit, we can have the same effect, but a little bit more fun.
Okay. Yeah, I have the same opinion as you, that number 2 is better than number 1. Another question, page 4 of the staff packet. I'm concerned about the phrase of eliminating plants based on site triangles. I didn't get the impression from the planting plan that there were going to be large, tall vegetation in the roundabout that would be eliminated. I just would prefer to see plants than not plants, and it's a design issue.
Yeah, we would prefer to see plants, as many plants as possible, but as the reality is, as traffic engineering reviews the plans and as the engineering is refined, the site triangles do change, and sometimes they change significantly. So when we prepare a proposal or when we submit this, we'd like to make it clear that there could be changes to what happens because of site triangles and because of the perception. We're dealing with many different roundabouts. Some of the philosophy on roundabouts is different in Anchorage. We're working on 2 on another project now, and the goal is to eliminate all views across the roundabout.
And what's the goal of this one?
So far, the goal of this one is to make it as nice as possible. We didn't really have, it was a gate, yeah, the goal, that's right. The goal was to create a gateway for the community with this roundabout. So we didn't have an obligation to put spruce trees in the center of it or something like that. The goal was the gateway, which in itself creates a slowing of traffic and helps with the other benefits and considerations of the roundabout.
Okay, so I think that your plant selection will be adequate, and I just want to make sure that it's not a condition, and it's not, and I don't intend to make it one. Okay, good, thank you. Traffic comments we got. Have you guys considered illuminating the gateways with accent lighting?
Would we consider illuminating the gateway with accent lighting?
Right now, the lighting concept appears to be pedestrian scale on the perimeter. I don't know how much is illuminated in the middle.
So this might be a good time to bring up the gateway design.
Sure.
When we did this submittal 6 weeks ago, this is the direction we thought we were going. There was a public meeting a week ago.
3 months ago.
What's?
We submitted it 3 months ago.
Oh, we submitted this 3 months ago. Yeah, sorry. A long time ago we submitted this. But there was a public meeting 1 week ago. The community, the neighborhood members, and some strong players in the Mountain View community associate, there have been problems with the, if you're familiar with the structures, they're located in several locations in Mountain View, kind of at dead ends, and what the community has seen is that there is alcohol use and gathering of unsavory elements, and some of them have created scary places. So people at that meeting asked us to rethink the use of those metal structures, and we haven't had the team debate yet of, you know, is this a management issue? Is this a community issue? Is this, we certainly don't want to put something out in the middle there that we think is a good gateway that the community perceives as a place where people are getting drunk and smoking pot and stuff like that.
The condition at the other gateways that are dead ends, that was traffic calming from 15 years ago, and they have seat walls and they have other components. It's an actual thing that you walk through. That's not the intent of the center island. It's a view shed thing.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's an argument to keep the gateways, perhaps.
We actually haven't had a chance as a team to discuss it.
I'll just make a comment if I could. If I could make a comment on the gateways.
Go ahead.
The municipality, this came up at the last public meeting, which was 2 weeks ago, I think. Since then, we've talked with the municipality, our client, and they've discussed that, yes, they want to work with the community to do a gateway. And so the gateway that we have shown here in the center island may go away, but there may be something else that comes up in its place. And your idea of accent lighting, that may, if the community, that's what they want to use to highlight this entrance to the Mountain View, then we certainly would consider that.
So if the gateway changes, would there be any requirement or necessity to come back here? I mean, is that a big enough element that would trigger something? I don't think it would.
I'm not sure of that, but what we're talking about doing is removing these pipe structures.
Right.
That would be the one thing that would change.
And putting something else back.
And putting something else that the community wants.
I believe if there was a big concern, staff would require us to come back to the commission.
This is their final review before us tonight. I mean, the commission could, if they felt the need for them to come back, or it could come back as an informational item. They would submit something and I would put it in your packet. If you were just curious about wanting to know what it is, if you wanted to have input on it, the only way you could have input on what they selected as that gateway feature would be for them to come back again. I guess the question is, would that impact the project schedule or not?
Yeah, my thought is that I like the integration of the existing gateways into the project, but if the neighborhood doesn't like it, then they need to voice that and then explain that to you guys. I do think it would be good to have a vertical element in the middle. I think that's really critical, or else people are going to just drive right across it. So we will discuss possibly later. I don't have any other questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Winchester?
Through the chair, a couple of questions. And maybe I'm missing it, but where you have the crosswalks, you have these other 4-foot sidewalks that go off on angles at every. Are those intended for bicycles? What are those at every?
Oh yes, yeah, they are. They're off. They're bicycle.
So you have bicycle off ramp back as you come along Mountain View Drive going east and go to the sidewalk, and then literally every crosswalk there's a separate one for bicycles there, both directions. I mean, what do they come out and go back on again? I'm just trying to understand that.
They can do that. It's for the bicycle rider that's not aggressive. An aggressive, or I mean, I should not use the term aggressive, but a bicycle rider that's highly skilled would probably just use the roundabout. If somebody is in the roadway and wishes to go through the intersection through the series of ramps and crosswalks, that's what the intent of these special ramps are for.
All right. Yeah, understood. That sort of brings up my second point, the word aggressive. My experience with roundabouts is that all drivers are getting more aggressive with roundabouts in Anchorage.
Can I retract that then?
Yeah. And the speed through the roundabouts that you mentioned at 20 miles an hour, I have not seen ever. It's usually 30 or 35. And so my question really comes to that. How do you slow people down through the roundabouts? Because I think they're not a bad idea, but I can tell you, a pedestrian's taking this particular road with 10,000 cars on it, and of those cars, they're not local cars. Most of those are going to the base or leaving the base or going around the traffic that's already on the Glen Highway at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and so they peel off back at Commercial Drive and several of those places. And so you have 10,000 cars barreling out through here or going the other way at one time or another, and they're not local. These people are using this as a secondary roadway to the Glen. And I can't imagine them going through this intersection at 20 miles an hour. I'm sorry. And so I'm really questioning, how do you slow people down in these? And is there a way to do that?
Well, the idea behind the roundabout is it uses essentially a deflection in the vehicle path to slow it down. So you have a series of small radiuses that aren't negotiable at higher speeds. And where you might have problems is if you have a roundabout that's not designed well, where instead of being forced to negotiate those small radiuses, they instead can just cut across and use a cord travel. In this particular roundabout, we've taken great pains to do that, to ensure that those deflections are achieved, both at the entrance where we have a splitter island that sets the direction of the vehicle, and then the central island here, this that is also engineered so that a vehicle that traverses that will do so at a radius that the vehicles travel at a relatively small speed. Now, one final thing that helps us out for speed control and roundabouts is that they're all sloped the wrong way for faster travel. They're all sloped outward, so that they have essentially a negative super elevation as an engineering term, but that also helps us keep the speeds down as well. So let me just conclude by saying, I'm sorry, but we did look at design standards. We have the latest tools that we can use to design this roundabout, and it complies with all those standards and tools and guidelines.
So is there a way to put a speed limit through these things? I mean, can you put up 20 mile an hour through these? I'm serious about this. I've watched pedestrians almost get killed at the Dowling and the new one out south of town. And the cars are going through those. Just go out and watch those intersections once in a while. People are not used to seeing pedestrians, and they come up to these and they get used to just going right through them because there's not pedestrians there all the time. But when there is, people just aren't looking for them. They're thinking about the traffic. They're looking for this guy pulling out of McCary Street, and they're trying to get into that loop because there's 5 cars going around in the loop. They are not looking out for a pedestrian at all.
Yes, I understand your concern.
And this is a pedestrian. I mean, this is a pedestrian roundabout.
Yeah.
Dowling Road and the one, at the end of C Street where it hits, some of those don't get the pedestrian traffic this one's going to get.
Yeah. I can say that one of the things that the advantages of this roundabout over both of those, ones at Dowling and the one at C Street, is that these are single-lane roundabouts. It's 10,000 cars a day in a single-lane roundabout is well within the limits of their operational capacity. So I don't expect this one to be, I know this one will not be nearly as complex as those multi-lane roundabouts that you'll see at Dowling or at C Street.
Okay, so the single lane you think is going to hopefully...
The single lane will work pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I admit they move traffic extremely well. I agree. They're just great for that. I just worry about the pedestrians.
I can tell you that I use roundabouts a lot as a cyclist, and the single-lane roundabouts are never a problem for me. There was one on Southport that I use weekly, if not more frequently. It works really well. You go out to the refuge and you wait for the gap, or a lot of times people will actually stop for you, and you can go ahead and go through. So I'm convinced that these single-lane roundabouts won't be a problem for pedestrians.
Okay, that is a big concern, and I wonder how we can slow people down. And thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Condon?
Yes, Madam Chair. Getting back to these gateway structures, I worry about these, especially in light of a couple comments made about, people speeding through these and cutting them close and needing to have illumination so that you can see them coming up. These gateway structures are anchored into the ground. I mean, these are like heavy steel pipes, and I would worry about the safety issue of having, if somebody were to unfortunately plow through one of these, the middle of this, with these steel structures, that it could be, catastrophic. And I would also like to encourage you to consider Commissioner Leonetti's idea of lighting in that central location. I know that staff mentioned that the lighting layout was problematic in ways. I think that utilizing that roundabout as a staging ground for vertical light elements could sort of mitigate the hazard of these steel pipes. I mean, we've got collapsible light poles, and then we could perhaps mitigate the hazard of those gateway structures and perhaps provide some useful lighting.
Thank you. I should point out too that there is a raised center island there. It's not very clear from the plan views we show, but there's a raised center island where we would have vegetation. So to hit those pipes, which I think are going to be removed at request of the Community Council, but to hit those pipes, you would first hit that raised curb. And one of the reasons we do have illumination is to accentuate those barriers, so it becomes pretty clear to the motorists that there's something in the way they need to slow down.
Okay.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Hi. Just the first question. I'm just looking at your sidelines. I think the design shows concern for the pedestrians. I think it's great that we have the crosswalks and that you have an area of refuge. My question is, how tall are your small deciduous trees?
We are looking at a couple of different types of trees. They'll be taller than like a Prunus mackii. They'll be able to meet the clear, they'll be able to be pruned at 72 inches, I think is the requirement. I think we looked at crab apples as being able to do that, and possibly Korean maple. We're also trying to expand the planting palette in Anchorage. So it hasn't been determined. In all likelihood, the trees that you see in the vision triangle at that curve, those probably will not stay in the design. And that just has to do with the need to prune them up so high that they become lollipops and silly trees.
Yes, I was just a little, my thoughts here is that your sight lines, once you get to the edge, you will see the person. But sometimes people in the bikes, it kind of stops but continues, and they turn before that point. So I'm just wondering if moving them a little away so you get a better visibility, sliding them from that crossing will make it a little safer. Because, my peer is concerned about like the speed. Well, that's not something easy to address, but definitely we can make better sight lines so they are,
We can definitely remove the trees out of the site triangles.
you know, just move them to the side, don't take them away. I mean, just slide them to the side so it's a better visibility for pedestrians and for cars to be aware that a biker is coming. You know, it could be stuck behind the trees and they don't see it. And yes, you're busy trying to figure out your cars.
Yeah, it's when you put trees in like that, there is a traffic calming effect with the trees, and that's one of the reasons we do like to have them closer to the edge of the road. But then there's the debate about the site triangles and being able to see, and we've kind of expected that traffic engineering would ask us to remove the trees from the site triangle.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ream?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Personally, I'm terrified when I get into roundabouts. So when I'm going through Dowling, I'm very slow. And I think this geometry lends itself to slowing down. I can, you know, with the curvature and the size of the radius, anyway, and the fact that it's a single lane. I don't think there will be any problems with the speeds. So I'm sure this came up in your review with traffic, because as we all know, Mr. Boots is an ADA compliant, I hate to use the term Nazi, but why are we putting in a bike ramp and not extending the trail to include an ADA ramp at the south, I think that's south, curb return, so that bikes can just immediately enter the existing trail, and we would also have an ADA ramp in place at that southern curb return.
I think all ramps would be ADA. I'm not sure if I understand your question completely.
So we're not extending the bike ramp that exists on the south curb ramp? Is it west? West. This is north, this is south. North, south? Pine Street, Mountain View Drive? On the east side of Pine Street?
East side, yeah, this.
ADA ramp exists right there.
Oh, it does right there?
Yeah. So you're extending the pavement out, and I know a lot of times whenever I come near a curb return without an ADA ramp, I get a comment. And I'm just wondering why we're going through this process of creating this strange bike ramp when we could just bring bikes on.
At the ramp. I think I understand what you're saying now. And I don't know. I mean, maybe we should do that. We should look at that.
Okay. I just wasn't sure if that was something you had looked at and there's a reason why there's a conflict there, maybe some, I didn't know.
Well, I think if the intent was to try to give the vehicle or bicycles a way off the roadway before they get to the roundabout, and if that existing ramp would accomplish that, then maybe we should revisit that.
It was just an observation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think.
Thank you.
And I did have one more question, and this goes back to the lighting. So the landscape plan, which is page 53 of the packet or page 32 of your plan set, it does show two, I think they're proposed lights. They're in light gray, but two proposed lights on the west side of the project, on the north side of Mountain View Drive. But the lighting plan, which is page 27, doesn't bring the lights that far. So I was just concerned if there's not going to be any lighting.
No, I think the landscape plan is more recent than the electrical plan.
So you will be putting two more lights there on the north side, perhaps?
Perhaps, depending on commission comments. The goal was, as Randy said, to bring those existing pedestrian light fixtures that are in the other part of the neighborhood into this project. What the electrical engineer did is he spaced them to meet a minimum light standard versus to meet maybe a pedestrian scale standard. You know, sometimes we'll space those lights at a certain distance apart to make a statement for pedestrians. He's an electrical engineer. He did it based on science.
But so looking at sheet 27, the light number 1, is that sufficient to light the north side of the road and the pedestrian path?
I believe what the electrical engineer did in his lighting layout was give us the minimum amount of lights needed to achieve the light without using, so what we requested when we saw the lighting plan was, well, how many of these, could any of these be pedestrian lights? And so that was what we were starting to work with him on. How many traffic lights could you, is that traffic lights or street lights? How many street lights could you have? What's the minimum number of street lights that you could have, and then enhance the rest of the lights with pedestrian lights? So that's, so his communication with us on the landscape plan, you see what his communication with us was. Yes, you could have 3 street lights and the rest could be pedestrian lights.
Okay. I have nothing else, thanks.
Commissioner Leonetti?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So 3 things for the bike. On the west of coming in, on Mountain View Drive coming in, so the intention is that, or the current design of the road is that there's a bike lane in the road. Is that correct? West of the project.
There are no bike lanes on the road right now, I don't believe. We're designing this for the bike that is using the road, the shared user, but there are no designated bike lanes.
So to clarify, if you've talked with Lori Skanke, the person who does all of these things, one of the things that happens, and I've ridden my bike on a roundabout, is I don't like riding in a roundabout, so I will pull my bike off I'll try to head and I'll jump the curb because now I have a cool mountain bike, so I can jump the curb. And that's what I think what she's seeing is that bikes are jumping the curb to get out of the roundabout and onto the pathways. And so what this is trying to do is accommodate that action. And I think it's a fairly new thinking. Or has it?
I believe there's been treatments like this before. I think the Southport roundabout, it does have this as well. It has an escape ramp, and it does have bike lanes. But the Southport roundabout, I believe, has a ramp that the rider can leave the bike lane and get on the bicycle pathway.
Yeah, that's where it's kind of intriguing, because we're in the other ones around town, there's a bike lane going off of the road. In this case, it's a wheeled vehicle that happens to be pedaled going off of the road, because that's the intent of being in the road, is you're just another vehicle in the road if there's no bike lane, and you're treated like another vehicle. So now you have an exit off of the road. So maybe it would be good to have a condition to evaluate that in some fashion, because I am a little concerned if somebody is going westbound on the trail on the southwest corner of this thing and going into the road, into oncoming traffic. There's no way for them to know that that's not a safe thing to do. If there's no bike lane. If there's a bike lane, then it makes sense. Right. And they could go onto the road going into oncoming traffic, which if there's a bike lane, might be okay. But if there's no bike lane, then it could be a problem. So maybe it's a sign, or maybe it's just appropriate to have a condition that says to consider the design elements for bicycles exiting and entering the road.
The ramp is not meant for entering vehicles. That'd be a
Agreed.
contraflow.
There's no way for them to know that, right? We could sign it, or we could, because then you would have. Go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, so that's one. On the site triangles that there's been a lot of good dialogue on, the trees agreed with Elise that they do provide some slowing of traffic. If we have these huge site triangles coming in, it's important to know what that criteria is and how to evaluate that criteria. And if there's trees that are pruned to the criteria of AASHTO that 30 to 6 or 8 feet, then in theory it meets the intent of the vision triangle. And I would be supportive of leaving the trees, because I think that they would keep cars going a little bit slower. But I think it would be a mistake to remove a lot of these trees that are adjacent to the road because of the site triangle, but that would be traffic, and we'll talk about that more later. Can you eliminate the lights on this plan and be in compliance with?
We could eliminate pedestrian lights, and then street lighting would just be calculated based on what the need is.
So the lights on the electrical plan are not street lights, or are not pedestrian scale lights? P5.
They're actually a mixture of both.
Oh yeah, this was the PL82s,
Yeah.
SL12s, and the HO.
The idea of the street lighting is it illuminates those, that central island, and would, help an approaching motorist realize that there's a deflection feature there that they need to negotiate. Without that, we'd be relying on headlights only, and that may not be the best approach.
So these are the 30-foot tall streetlights that are standard MOA, and then the pedestrian scale lights are the 15-foot lights.
That's correct.
And that's just me guessing because I haven't found it on the drawings.
Well, then, I don't know.
Madam
I thought you
Chair?
were reading it somewhere.
No.
Could I interrupt? On page 9 of your packet, you flip there, it's circled where the pedestrian lights are. There are 3.
Okay, I think that we'll just have to figure out if we want pedestrian scale lights or not, and then how, whatever the spacing is, we'll figure that out. Okay, thanks.
Okay, Commissioner Winchester.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one other question on the center portion of the roundabout. The only place that I really see, I see some information on this truck apron curb. And is it my understanding that it's a 2-inch curb? Where at the outside of the circle between there and the center part?
That's a standard 6-inch curb. It's a raised curb.
Okay,
I think that is
Well, okay, so it's,
they're talking about that curve there.
yeah, so if you look at sheet 33 in the plan set,
Yeah.
we have this curb, and then we have that.
Yeah.
That doesn't look like a 6-inch curb.
No, it's not. It's a lower curb, 2 or 3 inches, yeah.
Or something, yeah. And again, that's, if you look at the trucks with pups and things, and they drive through these, they drive over those and across
That's why
the
they make them
center.
low, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so do the fast-moving vehicles. Which is, again, my question about how to make these things safer, because once people figure out they can drive in the wintertime or whatever through these things virtually straight, I understand your curve, and I understand the slowing down, and I understand the intent, but I'm also dealing with the absolute practicality of having driven with them and sat there and watched them. Sometimes I've just pulled over and watched people drive through them for 15 minutes, and it's scary. And I know you're scared to go through them, so you slow down, but there are people who don't. They treat them like just a little bump in the road. And I know we need to, maybe that's an enforcement issue, but it seems like we can do something more at the design level, because that little curb is not going to stop a truck driving through there and slow down to 20 miles an hour.
I think that, excuse
I know.
us, I think he's referring to this curb here and the fact that this truck apron is often traversed.
It widens the road, yeah.
If you look at the plan and you assume that curve is just a little 2-3 inch curb and you got a little snow on the road, virtually people just drive right straight through. it's not a single lane, I mean, it's a single lane, but they don't take the time to go all the way around.
Yeah. We are relying on people to behave well.
I appreciate that.
Other than that, there are perhaps some texture features we can do, but that often
So the reason
becomes,
the curb is low is to allow large truck traffic to
yes,
go through it.
to allow their trailing wheels to
Right.
use that center island.
Yep. I'm sure these all meet the standards, Mr. Kenny, and I appreciate that. I'm just trying to figure out a way where we as a community can deal with a situation that I think we've created these now, but they've only been the last 5 years, and I'm starting to see the ramifications of them, and I don't know who to talk to other than sit on this commission and ask these questions about how to slow people down. So, if you
Good
have
question.
a solution, I'm really all for, how we do it. Thank you.
Yes.
Commissioner Leonetti?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So back to this bike lane, two things, bike lanes and plants. So, not bike lane, bike entering the road. So this was put in here based on your guys' experience riding through a roundabout and how it would be beneficial for the cyclist who is a vehicle in the road to exit the road. Rather than doing that at intersection and having to know where they're going, the idea would be to put this scenario in. So it's not required by anybody or anything right now. Nobody has said put this in because of transportation.
I'm going to ask somebody who might know.
Sure.
You know?
I'd like to write a condition that is helpful.
I don't think anybody's directed us to do this. I think this is something that our team came up with as a good option.
I believe you came up with this idea because it's a good idea. And that needs to stay in the design. It's not unusual.
Finally, someone speaks
It
up.
has been done in other roundabouts. Specifically, it's at Southport. And this is a good idea. And I commend you for having it as part of your project.
So how do we keep pedestrians from going onto the road? We don't worry about it?
We can't design for stupid people.
Well, but I don't think that would be a stupid person doing that.
I think someone that uses that as an on-ramp to go in the opposite direction of traffic is not a smart person. And I don't expect that to be a common occurrence. I don't think people drive their bikes against traffic routinely, especially when there's not a bike lane out there.
Right, well, that's the
So
concern.
I think it'll be fine. That's my opinion.
Huh. Well, that's good comment, thanks. Okay, so we'll let that one go. The transplanting of trees. What's the project schedule? Like, when is construction?
I think construction is scheduled for 2016 at the moment.
Like spring?
No, that's 2015, so 2016. And it really has to do with getting some agreements in place with the J-Bear, who owns some of the land there that we're looking at traversing. So the design will likely be completed in time for 2015 construction, but if the funding's not in and all the right-of-way and easements aren't complete, then we expect it to go to 2016.
Okay, so let's say that it's the March of 2016 and you can't dig the plants. Are you guys intending to put same-size caliper trees in there where the transplanted trees are going?
In March?
There should be no reason we can't transplant the plants because they won't work until the ground is thawed. So with the ground thawed, the trees should be able to be moved. And ideally, we would move them as early as possible.
Right.
We have selected a site that we're moving them to that's not going to be disturbed during construction. So we envision that the contractor will dig a planting pit, and we're actually writing the specs that requires him to move the trees in the same 48-hour or 24-hour period of time. He has to move the trees from one place to the final destination place along the edge of the park.
Okay, and are you putting a caveat in there that if they're, like every other project, they get demolished, that new plant material will be put in there?
We hadn't considered that, but we can certainly consider that.
So that's not really a concern of the design team? Like that, this is the intent, this is what we're doing, we're making these guys do this?
Our intent was not to waste trees.
Right, I agree. I appreciate it.
And right now, Parks isn't really in a position to take trees and bring them to a nursery. So that leaves us with the option, and we don't want to store them someplace and take care of them because there's a very low success rate with storing trees on site, taking care of them, and then replanting them. So our goal was to replant as many trees as possible in one fell swoop.
Okay, yeah, I'm just used to hearing that it's cheaper to buy a new plant, and I don't want that to happen. So
that's why we think if we move them, if we pick them up, move them into a transplant pit instantly, we'll actually save money and we'll have a nice caliper-sized tree.
So that's more cost-effective than buying a new tree, you think? Okay.
It's less wasteful.
And less wasteful.
I mean, they're not bad trees. They're Prunus macis, which is one of the easiest trees to transplant. You know, you see those coming up to Anchorage with 3-inch caliper trees that have a root mass of 8 inches. It's pretty amazing. So I'm not anticipating, you know, with some trees we'll anticipate a 50% loss. On this one, I wouldn't expect a higher loss than 15-20% mortality.
Okay. Thanks. That's it.
All right, do we have any final questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So the matter now rests with the commission. Can I get a motion to approve? We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Ream. Can we get a second, please? We have a second from Commissioner Sullivan. Commissioner Ream, would you care to state your motion, please?
Yes, in the matter of case 2014-0146, context-sensitive solutions transportation project site plan and landscape plan review of the Mountain View Drive, McCary Street intersection and safety upgrades, move to approve with condition 1 provided by the staff.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion to approve case 2014-0146, subject to staff condition number 1. Commissioner Ream, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, I think this is a nice betterment. I appreciate the thought that went behind the landscape plan, the geometry of the roundabout. I understand Mr. Winchester's concerns, but I think that the way this is designed, it will function well. I would, and I'm not going to add this as a condition unless other commissioners feel I should, but I would consider putting an ADA ramp in that southwest corner at Pine and Mountain View. It just completes all of the ADA improvements that were made to the project as a whole, and if there's ever a continuation of a trail to the west of Pine Street, you would already have your ADA ramp in place. I don't see one there now. It looks like it's just an 8-foot path that pavement probably comes to the curb line, and that's it, I think.
Thank you. Commissioner Sullivan, would you like to speak to your second?
Yes, I concur with Commissioner Nicole. I think the design is up to standards, and there's been consideration for safety. So I think I want to support the motion.
Is there any additional discussion? Commissioner Leonetti?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I intend to support the motion, and I commend the applicant and the designers. I appreciate the integration of the neighborhood theming into the roundabout, and I understand that there's some concern with the community council that might not be as desired, and that they will communicate that to the project team. In regards to the pavement in design, I would like to just make the comment that option 2 is preferred. I'm not sure if we need a motion or if that's a finding of fact, but that is my preference. I have the following findings of facts. The project is located at Mountain View Drive and McCary Street. Mountain View Drive serves as the main neighborhood in northeast Anchorage, main corridor rather, for the commercial and residential areas through the neighborhood. McCary Street links the highest density Wonder Park neighborhood south of the Glen Highway to Mountain View Drive. Number 2, the MOA Traffic Division has identified this intersection as a priority for both vehicular and pedestrian safety and circulation improvements. Number 3, the Mountain View Community Council has made this project their highest priority and support it. Number 4, this high-speed pedestrian volume intersection serves several neighborhoods, schools, and local parks in the northeast community, northeast Anchorage. Number 5, furthers the goals and policies of the Comprehensive Development Plan, Comp 2020 Plan for policies 37, 38, and 54, Anchorage pedestrian plans, goals 1 and 5, and the bicycle plans, goal 2 and 3. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any further discussion? Can everybody please vote? So the motion has passed. All right, do we have any commissioner comments before we close the meeting today?
Let's talk about the training really fast.
Do you want to do it after?
We could
wanna
do
make
it
on,
after.
because we don't have to do it on the record. unless
Yes,
you want to.
we don't have to do it.
Okay. Can I get a motion to adjourn? We have motion to adjourn from Commissioner West Winchester, second from Commissioner Sullivan. We are adjourned.